Hey Gina,
Yes, Don.
got a joke for you.
I'm ready.
What do you think of that new diner on the moon?
I don't know. What did you think about it?
Well, the food was good, but there really wasn't much of an atmosphere.
It's Tuesday, and it's time for some simple ideas and tips to help parents live a more conscious parenting experience. Today we're talking about contrast. Contrast is the base of how we define life. Good, bad, left, right, up, down, black, and white. If all things in the world were white, with no other color at all, we would not have the definition of white. It would be just what is. When another color is added, then there is this and there is the other. So now we have to define each of those. Think about it. If there was no good, how would we know that things were bad? If there was no left, how would we know?
We'd be going in circles.
Right. So contrast helps us to define where we are. I like to say when I'm struggling, this is my is not day. This is my experience of, okay, I don't want my day to look like this again, so I'm going to accept the way things went today and know that I want to do it differently.
That's a Neil Donald Walsh thing from Conversation with God. You don't know the is until you know the is not. Which took me the longest time. I remember reading that over and over to get that concept, get that idea. And I think that's where probably a lot of people don't really think about the idea. I think contrast to me is probably one of the biggest parts about life.
Yeah. We believe that we're spiritual beings and we come into this world for that very reason, to experience contrast. Without the contrast, like we said, we don't have a full understanding of what is. I imagine living somewhere where there aren't change of seasons. Do you really appreciate the weather?
Yeah.
When you don't have a real cold winter, do you really appreciate the warm weather? When you don't have that contrast.
Yeah. No, like I said, it just because what it plays into, like when I'm working with clients, is the idea of possibly getting rid of the titles of good and bad, so that you can look at each experience as leading to the next, instead of it being, well, I always use my heart attack, honestly, as it was terrible at the moment, at the time, but it put me in a place of doing more of what I want to do in my life, more of a passionate. So without it, I may not have gotten to where I am now, and I feel a lot better about what I do now than what I did then. So
yeah, you were ready to let go of the website business world and people calling you and harassing you about their email being down.
So looking at each experience that we have is what's it leading us to, and a good amount of times it's going to lead us to something even better. We lose that job, and the next thing that comes along is a much better job, a much better pay, or whatever. You've been down that road.
Yeah, there's another story in there when I was working for this one facility, and the manager at the time was I was struggling with her. I was sharing concerns and frustrations I would have, and sometimes she'd be a good listener and sometimes not, and I got told that I was not going to work there anymore. They weren't firing me. When you work PRN, you don't really get fired.
You don't get called back.
And I was very upset about it, and yet it propelled me into 2 other positions that I took, and at a higher rate of pay.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't always happen that the next event might not be as good either. But
well, it might lead you to this, and that will lead you to this.
Yes.
So even though your next experience might be not what you wanted or chose, like with the job, it's a step forward. Like we talked about last week. It's moving in a direction.
Yeah.
It's moving moving forward.
So think about what contrast you've had in your life and how it might change in your perspective.
And I want to add, this is something I do when I work with patients as an occupational therapist at the nursing home rehab center. I tell people to look back on where they were a week ago. You know, we get people, typically they're over 65. They've either fallen down, broken a bone, had medical complications in the hospital from heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, a number of different things. And so they've been through a tough time in the hospital. They're typically in bed getting tests most of the time. And I tell them, you know, from one day to the next, you might not see improvement. But if you look back to where you were a week ago, seeing the subtle differences, the subtle changes, you know, with our kids, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to yourself.
To your earlier self.
Our youngest is an amazing is an amazing artist.
Right.
And I remember showing her things she drew when she was younger because she was very critical of herself and her drawings. I'm like, well, look where you were at before and look at where you are now.
Yep.
To see that contrast.
And we're Don and Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
We'd love to hear from you, and you can find us at www.focusedhealthyfamily.com.
And thank you for being here today.
That's our podcast for today. We hope you have enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment. If you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us for our next workshop. Find out at www.focusedhealthyfamily.com and follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. Remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.